Hey, what's going on, guys? Aaron here. Welcome to the video. So there's actually some really good news that came out today having to do with quantitative easing. And we're not quite there yet, but we're getting freaking close. So I wrote about this on my X. They said the Fed just hinted at resuming balance sheet growth. And this came out yesterday. Fed's Williams hints at resuming growth in the balance sheet. So this is the main story I want to cover today. I will go over that in just a sec. I also want to cover a few different things as well. Ray Dalio, super famous investor, right? He wrote this long article, I believe yesterday, about stimulating into a bubble. I want to cover this as well, and really the big takeaway here and what he thinks is going to happen. Because it's very important what will happen and then how to prepare for it and how to get out of the way when things probably collapse, and if there is a bubble, it'll definitely pop. We got a story about JPMorgan's prediction for Bitcoin. Also, who is selling the Bitcoin, right? This whole redistribution like I talked about in my last video. Before I get into all those stories, which are super important, especially if you are still in the market and you haven't sold everything, or even if you sold everything, I think it's still important to know. I want to talk about just kind of what's going on right now in general. So this October 10th event was, I think, bigger than I even realized, and I'm realizing it more and more. This was the whole massive wipeout when Trump said we're going to do 100% tariffs on China. That really messed up everything, and we're still recovering from that. The liquidity that got wiped out will come back, but it just takes time, and I think we're still feeling that ramification from that post. That was seriously huge. We also have 470,000 Bitcoin that have moved from wallets that are over 5 years old to newer hands. I did talk about that in my last video, but why that is important is because we are in a massive redistribution phase. And so far, there is a strong bid at $100,000. And that's why we're seeing the price maybe go a little bit below 100K and then go above 100K. But we're seeing a lot of buyers step in to absorb this selling pressure that we've seen actually for months, more or less the entire year. A lot of what happened this year was a move away from Bitcoin being the most exciting thing to invest in, especially take leverage on, and into gold and AI and quantum computing and different sectors that I think got a lot more publicity. But eventually the attention will come back to Bitcoin like it always does, right? The attention always comes back to Bitcoin because it's very sexy, very novel. There's nothing like it. So before I get into those other stories, we can see right now Bitcoin is around 102. It's just chilling in that $100,000 range, and a redistribution of coins from old holders to new buyers. It's not a bad thing, but it just creates a lot of, boringness in the charts. Also, this is where I prefer to do all of my trading, and they have super low trading fees. So I want to talk about this. Really quick. This is huge. This came out on the 7th, so yesterday. So the Federal Reserve could soon start expanding its asset portfolio again. New York Fed President John Williams, awesome composer, not the same guy, hinted in a speech Friday. Fed officials voted last week to stop shrinking the $6.6 trillion asset portfolio from the start of December. That move is meant to stop too much electronic cash, known as bank reserves, from draining out of the financial system. So the summary is right here. The Fed may return to expanding its securities holdings, but also they said it's in no way going to represent a change in the stance of monetary policy. But this is hinting again at the beginning of quantitative easing, definitely the end of quantitative tightening. So I did write a little bit about this. So what I said today is that when the Fed expands its balance sheet, it basically means it's adding liquidity back into the system. That means more bank reserves, easier credit conditions, and historically higher prices for stocks, crypto, and other risky assets. So for the last 18 months, the Fed has been doing quantitative tightening, letting assets roll off of its balance sheet. Basically, that's removing dollars from the system. So the composer for Jurassic Park, John Williams, just kidding, said they'll stop shrinking the balance sheet in December, and that could start expanding it again soon. So the expansion is really good for crypto. That's a pivot. It's not exactly QE, but it's a return to balance sheet growth. So who cares, right? Well, when liquidity increases, money starts flowing back into riskier assets like tech, small caps, and especially crypto, and Bitcoin often moves first. And there are examples of when we go into QE, like in 2020, Bitcoin is up 6x, etc. So More liquidity, Bitcoin is up. The Fed pausing QT and hinting at expansion marks a pivot from a bad environment for crypto to a much better one. Balance sheet expansion is bullish, and crypto senses it first. So we're getting hints that this is going to happen, right? And I've been talking about this for a while. It's just taking longer. And I really, really believe what happened on October 10th really slowed things down, right? It really put a hamper in the growth of Bitcoin, but we are going to recover from that. So this really quick, we have Robinhood, a $117 billion company or so, say they may be buying Bitcoin for its balance sheet. Let me just play this really quick for you guys.
We spent a lot of time thinking about this. We like alignment with the community. We are a big player in crypto. We want to keep doing it. We like that our customers are engaged in it. What we always try to figure out is it the right thing for shareholders as well? If you put it on your balance sheet, it has the positives and that you're aligned with the community, but it does take up capital. Our shareholders can also go and buy Bitcoin directly on Robinhood, and so are we making that decision for them? And is it the best use of our capital? There's a lot of different things you're doing, from new products for growth, investing in engineering. So we have this debate constantly, and I think the short answer is we're still thinking about it. There's pros and cons to both of it, and it's one that we're going to keep actively looking at.
Yeah. So there are so many companies, massive companies like Robinhood, that are having these discussions right now. And what will it take for a lot of them to decide to do it? Probably when one large company like a Robinhood decides to do it, a lot of other companies will follow. Also, when the government reopens and clarity gets passed, that'll also help the decision to add Bitcoin to the balance sheet as well. And speaking about the government reopening, so we'll see hundreds of billions of dollars flow back into the system when this happens. So right here, the Treasury TGA is about to break $1 trillion. The only time it was bigger was during 2020. Treasury can't spend because of the shutdown. QT ends in December. Potential liquidity about to hit the system. And yeah, this may be hopium, but this is also fact, right? We are seeing a massive balance in this account, and it cannot be spent until the government reopens. So, the last time it was this high, again, was much, much higher, but it was back in 2020. But, it is something that will really help once the government reopens. And more about some of these whales selling. So Charles here on X says, this chart gives a good visual of how many super whales are cashing out of Bitcoin. All lines here are 7+ year on-chain spends from before 2018. So the orange lines right here are going to be $100 million sells, and the red is going to be $500 million sells. So that is a big reason that 2025 was quite boring for Bitcoin. Really, really boring year for Bitcoin, right? So we can see here that other years it's kind of sparse, but in 2025, we can see it's lit up, right? Lots of orange and lots of red lines. And you may be wondering, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Should I be selling? What do these OG Bitcoin whales know that I don't? Ultimately, it's just a redistribution. A lot of people that were holding Bitcoin for 10, 12 years that maybe had 100 million or 500 million or $1 billion+ of Bitcoin, maybe they want to sell some, and they have every right to do so. Because the price is higher, they know that institutions and sovereign wealth funds are there to buy and maintain the price. They know that if they sell $500 million or $1 billion, it's not going to crash the price of Bitcoin. So a lot of these whales were waiting for this moment when there was this much backing from institutions. And probably some of these people are like hardcore anarcho-capitalists, and maybe they're libertarians, and they really wanted to believe in the original ethos of Bitcoin, which did not have to do with institutions buying it. And maybe just from like a moral perspective, they're like, well, I'm out. I made a bunch of money. Bitcoin is no longer what I thought it was going to be or what it was, back when they were fighting against the banks, right? Back in 2008, 2009. And maybe they sold for that reason too. So I want to talk about this really quick. If you want to read this, it's very, very good. It's a little technical. Ray Dalio, one of the smartest investors of all time. Well, I think so anyway. And he wrote something a few days ago about stimulating into a bubble. I'm not going to read this because I don't want to bore you reading his entire article. But right here, I just highlighted one little section for you guys. It says, it would be reasonable to expect that, similar to late 1999 or 2010 to 2011, there would be a strong liquidity melt-up that will eventually become too risky and will have to be restrained. So essentially, asset prices are going to go crazy high. During that melt-up, and just before the tightening that is enough to rein in the inflation that will pop the bubble, is classically the ideal time to sell. And what he's saying, literally right here, this time is different because the Fed will be easing into a bubble, right? And it's about riding the bubble and then cashing out before the bubble pops. He thinks we still have a way to go before the bubble pops, right? Because this time is different. We are cutting rates. We are probably moving into a quantitative easing cycle, at least ending quantitative tightening, into all-time high asset prices. Well, at least not Bitcoin right now, but literally a month ago, yes, right? Whereas before, we usually cut rates into a declining market, into a market that really needs the help. And he says right here, quantitative easing today is, quote, stimulus into a bubble. So he thinks there will be some big collapse soon. But to this article, if you want to read it, you can just head to Ray Dalio on X. I think it's pinned at the top of his profile. So he does think that asset prices will go up. Crypto, Bitcoin, the stock market, probably real estate. And this will increase the divide between those that have assets and those that don't, which I don't love. But if you're watching this, it means that you probably have assets, and that is a good thing for us. And ultimately, we just have to play the hand that we're dealt. We don't really have a say in what happens on a global scale. So yeah, it's a great read. You can check it out if you want. And finally, right here, JPMorgan predicting Bitcoin at 170K in the next 6 to 12 months because perp deleveraging is behind us and that it's undervalued versus gold historically, which implies significant upside for the next 6 to 12 months. So obviously, as you know, price predictions like this are usually wrong. But what they say here is Bitcoin could rise to around 170K within the next 6 to 12 months as leverage resets and its relative volatility versus gold improves, according to some JPMorgan analysts. The analysts said in a Wednesday report that the crypto market has corrected by close to 20% from its recent highs, with the sharpest decline occurring on October 10th amid record liquidations in perpetual futures, the largest in crypto history, followed by smaller liquidations on November 3rd. They said the November 3rd event came as investor confidence was further shaken by the over $120 million balancer exploit in the decentralized finance sector. So they think that leverage will reset, essentially that leverage will come back, and that will push Bitcoin to a higher price. And I'm sure they know more than I know, right? They know everything I talked to you about today about whale selling and the redistribution, also about what the Fed is going to do. And this is why they think Bitcoin's going to go to around 170K soon. So guys, that is it for the video. Just wanted to give you some updates on what's going on. I know people are in a tough spot right now, right? Right here, 72 of the top 100 cryptos by market cap are more than 50% down from their all-time highs. And I feel it. Everyone feels it. This was not the year we were expecting or what anybody thought would happen, truly, right? This has been a very bizarre year for crypto, but I will keep you guys posted on what's going on and hoping for the best soon, because I know a lot of people would really love to see their portfolios go up, including myself. I'll keep you guys posted. Hope you guys are doing well. Till next time, talk with you soon, and bye for now.